Are you ready to invest? Because this happens a lot where you plan, and then when you're given the bill, you go, well, maybe next month. I will say this on behalf of everybody who's had to work with entrepreneurs. You can push it. If you push it now, you'll push it next month. Yeah. If you're not ready to invest, if you're not, like, the intention isn't there, it's going to be a negative whichever month you do it. We've had that experience in our own business where we didn't invest in a sales team until we got to the point where we're like, okay, we've been saying we're going to invest in a sales team for X amount of time. You have to have the discipline to be able to know this is what the business needs. And the same way you invested in it to start, you have to invest in it to grow. 3 Eyes theory. This is my starting point. I kind of want us to start here because this guides everything else we're going to talk about throughout the day or throughout my presentation. The other people are going to be talking about more interesting things. So let's start with this. Insight first, iterate fast, invest smart. I like using this as a framework to be able to just advise on how you can figure out what's not working or where to get started, or essentially just how to structure your operations around digital marketing campaigns. My experience has been that these are the key loopholes and the key barriers that we face when we're trying to get into digital marketing, and also when we're trying to scale through digital marketing. And the reason why I'm saying insights and barriers is just because a lot of times when we talk about problem scaling, it's not usually something that's prohibitive. It's not like a limitation that we have. It's usually something that is requires us to think differently. And thinking differently does require us to change something. And this essentially gives you opportunities to change at every step of the process, but change where necessary. So let me start by explaining why insight first. Insight first essentially means you have to define why they buy. I think a key thing to take away from this, I'm going to start by saying this. I say it so many times. If you've been in other presentations, I'm sorry. You are generally not your customer. Get that out of the way and think about it as they. And you have to start by thinking, why do they buy? Not why do you make this, but why do they buy? Not why do you provide this service? What drives their decision? And this is something you want to be able to pull directly from what has been said to you. You might have been positioning your product like, I'm going to sell these t-shirts because they are warm and they're comfortable, but people buy them because they're black and they're cheap. So you might want to start thinking, if they're buying because of price and they're buying because of color, then this needs to be how I am reframing my thought. And when I say you want to get that information directly from the source, what I mean is talk to your customers, look at usage. You don't need to get into research unless you have research money. If you have research money, see me separately. But assuming we're all small businesses and we're all trying to figure it out, you can get it directly from your engagements. You can actually ask your audience. If you've built an audience and you've built a community, I'm foreshadowing, but if you've built a community, you should be able to ask them, why do you buy? And get an answer. You should be able to ask them, why do you like our product? Why don't you use X other service? Why don't you get this from someone else? And get those answers as quickly as you can. You can also just look at where people talk about you. So your comments, your DMs, etc. And my favorite is just run a poll. But the main thing you want to come out with, because the main goal for pretty much everything we're going to be doing today is pick one insight, one. Yeah, if we say because it's black and it's cheap and you don't want to be associated with cheap, so you want to go to black. All right, cool. Let's focus on talking about color. Let's focus on pushing this one proposition. It doesn't mean to ignore everything else. It just means that we're testing this one thing. Yeah, think of everything we're going to be doing, everything you do with digital marketing, a little bit like a test. Start with that insight. From there, you want to go now into what iteration looks like. Picking a stage, we'll talk about what the stages are, but essentially, if you've done marketing or if you've been to one of, I guess, any marketing forum, there's always the, awareness, consideration, conversion, etc. There's always those stages in your marketing process. Pick one. The importance of focusing on one is that you want to have a singular target that you get right. Right? So you want to know, does black bring more eyeballs here? Does black make people consider the product more? Does black make you want to buy? So we really want to be clear on what is it you're testing against a stage. Then you want to be able to experiment. If you put that black against white, assuming you also sell white t-shirts, does that change? Right? And the same thing applies for services as well. If you say your services are targeted at SMEs and you just take out SME and say we're targeting growing businesses, does it change? Right? You can test messaging, you can test a bunch of different things. We will go into how you decide what to test later, but you want to pick one thing and test it. If it doesn't work, this is where you change it. Change what the test is and come back and do it again. Then you want to pick what success looks like. So you want to pick a signal. You'll notice, by the way, in the spirit of acronyms, TEST. This is how you test, right? So when you pick your signal for what success looks like, then you pick what the tweak is that you get from it. So if, for example, you see that mentioning that these are black t-shirts boosts your sales by more than 10%, then this is going to be the key thing that we mention when we push it out there. And as a result, you'll get what you need to get. It's the same reason why if you look at like big companies that offer multiple things, they push one thing in their marketing because they've tested and seen what works. Nike advertises almost exclusively shoes, but they sell everything from equipment to like tech to Lord knows what else. But they market the shoes. They don't market the t-shirts. They don't sell you the shorts. They don't sell the socks. And by volume, I think socks are their highest selling thing. So you kind of have to consider where exactly do you want to pick that one message so you can get the insight for what works. Just remember, your customer. What works to get them to do something is not why you're doing what you're doing, right? There's a point there where you have to dissociate a little bit. Small example here would be if you say, what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 nano creators, we're going to tell them to do 2 stories and give them a WhatsApp code. And what we're going to look for is how many DMs do we get? And then from there, how many samples do we get? How many orders do we get? And that's our measure. If we hit any one of those 3 targets, then we know this is working. If you don't hit those targets, like let's say you get your 10 orders, but you only got 10 DMs, then you have to look at, okay, what is it about this? Do we need to tweak our DMs? Then you adjust that. But you don't adjust everything because one thing failed. You just tweak slightly. The goal here is that every time you run this iteration, remember it's like a cycle, right? You go 1 and then come back with the insight and repeat again. The next thing is investing. Invest basically means that you're putting your money where your mouth is, not your mouth. Do not eat your money. But you want to be able to scale what proves to work. So really you want to look at what KPI works for each stage. So for example, in the last one I gave, if you saw your orders still hit the target, but then your DMs are a bit high, then you know to I don't need as many DMs. We've had this conversation for the people who attended the webinar before, where I talked about the idea that you don't always need as many leads as you think you need, right? If you have 1,000 customers spending 1,000 shillings with you, you make 1,000,000 shillings. If you have 10,000 spending 100, you make 1,000,000 shillings. You have to decide which one you're trying to do. How are you getting to your million? And then tweak accordingly, right? What does it take to get those 1,000 customers? Does it take 100 DMs to get 100 customers? Or does it take 10,000 DMs to get 100 customers? Those are the things that you're kind of optimizing for. And the good thing with digital, unlike what you see offline, and I'm not going to go too much into this, but unlike billboards, radio, all these other things that happen offline, you can't tweak at that level. You can't just adjust one small thing and say, let me spend a little bit less because I don't need as many DMs, or let me spend a little bit more because I need more reach. You get what you get when you pay for what you pay. Here you have the option to actually start and say, let me put 20,000 into this. And if it brings me back 40,000, let me put 50,000 and see if I can get 100,000 out of this. And that's the benefit that you really want to be able to leverage here. So investing smart means understanding at the stage level what works. And 2, you want to be able to repeat it. Here I've put as creators because that's primarily where we deal. But you want to be able to look at, is this something that we can try in different ways? I should have changed that to partners. So if, say, for example, you do decide that you're going to do ads. So a lot of people saying they're going to boost their pages. Okay, cool. Or boost the posts. If you try it with one post, try it with another post, try it with a third post before you make a decision, right? So you really want to invest very slowly until you get it right. and you want to repeat and get insight that is actionable. Then make sure the unit economics work. So you really don't want to get to a point where you're investing, like I said, 50,000 to get 50,000 worth of sales. I don't think that's going to make sense. At that point, there's something wrong in the funnel. There's something wrong in the test. There's something wrong in the decision making. Step back and say, for me to make 50,000 bare minimum, looking at all my costs, this needs to be a 10K investment. Rule of thumb for marketing budgets, depending on the size of the organization, is you want 10 to 15% of your revenue to go to that, right? So that you can feel like you're in a comfortable space. So if you say 10% doesn't give me the returns I want, then you really want to step back. 15% isn't getting there either, then you really want to step back and say, something is wrong in my funnel, let me figure it out. Then from there, you really want to map. So I'll put creator mapping, but really think about it from, even if it's partners, even if it's posts, even whichever channel you go into, you want to be able to say, who does what for me, right? The example I gave here is with creators, you can be able to say, a macro creator helps me get visibility. So like someone who has many followers, there's as many as I can afford, they'll get me visibility. But the smaller ones, they get me action, they get me more engagement. People trust the people who they feel a little bit closer to. Although, it's Kenyans, we're a bit weird. We trust people sometimes that we really shouldn't. Point being that usually you get high engagement with the micros, you get high engagement with the nanos. And then you really want to be able to just think, even in terms of positioning, the people who do expertise. You get Anne to talk about something. She talks about entrepreneurship. She talks about business and finance. Then she's the type of person who can sway because of expertise, right? But then if you want to get someone who just talks about every random thing under the sun, Mainakageni, then he's just going to be pushing you like a billboard, right? You might as well just pay for the billboard. It's actually cheaper. But from there, what you want to do is to decide based on a ladder, this is what is a pilot. This is what I'm willing to test with. And if the test makes sense based on everything else, this is my sprint, right? So going from step 1 to step 2, step 1 is the initial test and it worked. For the 2 to 3, right? I did my first post, I tested, do black t-shirts work. I saw a bump in my sales. I was like, cool. Let me try it with 2 other posts. So I'm going to be like, black is beautiful. And I don't know, something. Post 2 and 3. What is my sprint for that? How much can I put aside for that? That checks out, then you need to figure out what's your monthly. Because now you found something that you can build on. Once you've set that stone down, think of it like you're building a foundation for your marketing. Once you've set that stone down and said, this value sells, this marketing tactic works, pick a new one. Find a new insight, iterate, invest. Once you get it to work, move to the next one. This is essentially how you scale your marketing funnel in a way that makes sense. We're going to go through this in more practice and with an actual case study. But the idea here is that you want to be able to kind of step by step build these things up. You want to be able to start by getting better at getting insights from your customers, from your consumers, from everyone, figuring out how to kind of optimize that funnel, figuring out how to continuously iterate and go through that cycle, and then figuring out where to invest. And all of that is just continuous discovery. If this sounds like a lot of work, I promise it is worth it, because ultimately what you want to do is invest where you know you're getting something out of it. Not all ROI is sales. Most of it is insight. And you really want to be able to reframe that so that everything you're doing is helping you get smarter and get better at doing what you need to do. Let's jump to the next part. I want to talk about like the audience to customer journey, turning attention into intention. In many cases, whichever platform you look at, online or offline, most of what you're doing is just speaking into a crowd, right? And the general assumption is just the more you speak or the louder you speak, the more you'll be heard. But that's not always the case in terms of the more you speak, the more you'll sell. Or the more you speak, the more people will call you, or the more you speak, et cetera, et cetera. What I want to talk about is just what usually drives that attention, that crowd, that audience into people who go from fans of XYZ page into customers. The general funnel you'll see here is the same one as the sales funnel that we're talking about, but I like kind of using this one because it's easier, at least for me, to remember. So this is see, think, do, care, if you've dealt with it before. before I get into this, I want to pause for a second. I am going to show you the framework and then I'm going to critique it. Because I think one of the things we also need to do, and I know in general, judging by the fact that you're here, we're all people who try to put a lot of intention into the work we put out there. And one of the key things we have to do is question where the knowledge came from. The sales funnels, the frameworks, the whatever that are done by experts, in many cases, I'm just judging by like the general tint of faces here, were not designed for us. Yeah, it's not like Africans who studied African buying consumption habits and then said, this is the framework for Kenya. No. Most of this was based on what works in the West, what works in places where capitalism is structured in a specific way, places where they don't have an economy of affection or an economy of trust. So you'll see me put up the framework and then you'll see me correct it. And I'll give you kind of what I think we should take out of it, right? So it doesn't mean to discount it from the beginning. It's still worth something. We can learn from some people. So, see, in terms of the audience, you're looking for a qualified, broad audience. As broad as you can get, right? But qualified, right? So when we're talking about T-shirts, are you going to be targeting people who are interested in suits? Well, no, not really. Are you going to be targeting people who, I don't know, I'm trying to think who doesn't wear T-shirts. This is a really tricky example. But anyway, you want to essentially try to think based on qualification, right? Pick a qualification. People who have active lifestyles, people who, engage in a lot of casual activities like going out and whatnot. Those type of things where you can be able to qualify something and then try to think how broad it can go. Children, I don't know. Pick the qualifications that you want to go with and then build an audience from there if you're looking at the C objective. Then from there, what you mainly want to get, if you're focusing here, is you just want to get as much attention as possible. So knowing what you know, if say, for example, we decide based on our audience, based on the insight we're looking for active people and children. Where can you get attention for these people? Who are the people you want to speak to? You want to be in gyms, you want to be in public spaces, you want to be in, playgrounds. You want to be think of the areas where this kind of attention exists and how do you access those areas. Again, dissociate yourself from where am I and where are they and go more into where are they and how do I get there. You're not always the person to get to the customer. Sometimes you need a conduit to get you there. If you're trying to speak to children, maybe you want to talk to Playroom because she talks to parents. She has a space. Kids go there. That's where you should be. That doesn't mean you should be there. You can just step back, engage her, and she'll engage that audience for you. I'm pushing creator marketing very heavily today. Ads are traditionally what is pushed in this space. Because with ads, you can target. You can go into Google. I saw a lot of you have done display ads. So you can go into Google and specifically say, I'm interested in people who are interested in active lifestyles and blah, blah, blah. And then you get that, right? And essentially what you're looking for, the main metric that you usually measure is reach. We think it's a little bit different. We think you're mainly looking for people who are already problem aware. So the qualification here goes from what you think these people are to how they react. So problem aware means they have responded to something that shows you they have some level of intention. Yeah. They have searched, since so many people are putting SEO as a priority, they have searched for keywords like yours. That's where you get into think, right? They have expressed this as a concern. That's where you want to be able to touch these people. And for them, the main thing you want to get is consideration. So if someone is searching for quality black T-shirts, very different from someone searching for black T-shirts, because that person who's searching for quality black T-shirts has a problem. You want to be able to speak to that problem. And you want to be able to see them with your page that's now SEO optimized, since everyone said they were going to prioritize that one, not everyone, but like 55% of you. You want to be able to speak to that thing and say, we have high quality, locally made black T-shirts, right? The main thing that usually sells is content, because you have to consider, again, in terms of consumption habits, what people do when they have a problem. When they have a problem, they look for a solution. They look for a solution. How are they going to get it? Something has to be given to them for them to be able to unpack, right? So you have to be able to look, find something, read it, and be convinced. Look, find a video, watch it, and be convinced. Or have the problem and hear someone talking about that problem, pay attention, and say, that's a solution I want. That's usually how the majority of us get sucked into considering a brand. And then from there, the main thing you're looking for is views and visits, because that's when you know that someone has gone further to actually consume that content. Because here you're looking for consumption. Here you're basically just looking for how many people have seen this, but here you're looking for how many people have taken the step further to consume. They've clicked on the website, they've gone to a page, gone to a second page. Now you know this person is hooked, right? For doing, you're looking for people who are ready to buy. The guys who come and they've clicked on your page and they've gone around and they've seen these things, now what do they want to do? They're at the point of considering purchase. So you want to direct them. All right, here, go to the store. Pick your type of, which weight of t-shirt do you want? We are that good of a store, right? So you really want to consider that these are people at the point of purchase, and these are people, this is the shortest part of the funnel, right? So they're mainly trying to convert, and the thing that usually converts them is call to action. Now I want you to pause for a second. Usually what you're optimizing for is here. You can't really change this part, but you can change this bottom part. You can change the metrics, and you can change the method. So when you're testing, when we're talking about iterating and optimizing, you really want to look at the channel and you want to look at the metric that you're mentioning, right? So with do, the call to action is usually what you're testing for. Because if you've done the rest of this right, the only thing that's going to change it is whether or not you have a button there that says buy now, a button that says free delivery, a button that says 24-hour delivery, or a button that says save 15% today. Which one is going to convert for you faster, right? Which one is going to bring more ROI back to you? So these are the things that you want to be able to kind of look for when you're testing the do objective. And how you measure success there is with leads and orders. So the conversion point there, the success, the signal is going to be your leads and orders. On care, this is the part that I feel is underrated, and I think it's part of what Pat will be talking about after me. We really want to focus on how much we engage with our community. This is where community building happens, and by far this is the most valuable. I will get into it in a few, but this is where the value really drops for a lot of people. So how do you engage with your customers currently? Think about it from the standpoint of you now have people who've come and they've given you money. If those people say, man, I took this course with Pat, like you just need to go give Pat all your money. Do they actually do? Please give Pat all your money. But in the event that someone says that, that has a lot more weight, and we'll get into that in specifics, but that has a lot more weight than if she puts up a banner here saying, give me all your money. Yeah? So consider what you do with your customers, because at the end of the day, all these advertising channels are a lot less valuable than those people. You'd rather have 10 of them who go out and push and preach for you than to have, 100 people who just see a flyer that says, give said all your money, give said all your money, all of it. So the main thing you're looking for here is interaction. And of course, the thing that lets you know that this has worked is one, repeat. If the customers liked you so much at their back, well and good. I really like to see that there were so many people who are back here for Converge yet again. Appreciate you. And I really like to know that so many of you came from social, because we didn't run ads on social. We just talked to people on social. So it's also nice to see. But essentially that's the way love goes. That's the way brand love goes, customer love goes, etc. And you really want to leverage this, right? Now, my critiques begin here. Start by understanding your audience a little bit before you apply this framework, right? Because what you'll see when you do that is that what people say determines what people do. And I've had this conversation a few times, but I want to give you numbers so that you can understand why I'm so insistent on this framework needs to be reevaluated. We are the least likely continent to click on an ad. Least likely. If you want to know how skeptical we are, mind you, we are the least likely continent. And in Kenya, we are the least likely country. So Africa as a whole is about 20%. There's a report there which will be included in the stuff we share. But Africa as a whole is about 20% likely to click on a display ad when they see it. Likely. Not that they actually click, but that the likelihood that you'll see an ad and consider it. Yeah, the actual click rate is significantly lower. I'm sure you've seen that if you've run ads before. The US, for contrast, is 55%. You see that framework they gave us before, and they told us it'll work for us. Anyway, so the first thing to consider there. Now, the more engaged an audience is online in Africa, the less likely they are to engage with an ad. So I told you the Africa average was 20. Kenya average. I've already seen people looking down and shaking their heads. Those are people who've run ads. Kenya average, I think, is at 12 to 14%. We are skeptical from the beginning, which is cool until you're trying to use this as the source of your, input, right? So important to consider. Ads, it's not that they don't work, it's just that you have to be really clear what you're expecting from them. You have to be really clear what the value you want to get out of them is. A strong recommendation, and this is across the world, not just in Africa, because they don't do studies on us as much, is 50% more likely to trigger a purchase. And my question to you is, based on that first bit of data that I've given you, if it is 50% more likely to trigger a purchase in a country that believes in ads, in a country where we don't believe in ads, how high is that number? Right? Let's go further. 89% of people trust people more than companies, more than ads, more than anything else for recommendations. This is a universal fact, right? Trust as an economy, like I said, if Patricia put the poster out here that said, give me all your money, versus if I came and said, no, give her all your money, there's a massive difference, right? And then the last one, and again, keep in mind, this is for the rest of the world, not just for Africa. Word of mouth drives 2 times more impact on purchase decisions. 2 times. Sales impact globally. Lowest number you'll find is 2x. But come back to the fact that where we sit, ads aren't a factor. Yeah? This is 2x when you're comparing it to 55%. What is it when you're comparing it to 12 or 14? Or let's be kind and say 20. Right? So my thinking is, before I get into my thinking, I want to talk about what we do trust. Right? This is why you've seen us shift our focus to creators. I should just point out that one of the things just throughout our evolution as Verge, you will see is that we shift to where the solutions and the value is. When we moved from traditional advertising to digital was because back then we saw that this is the train to back, right? So when you see us saying we're shifting to creators, this is the train to back. We spent a lot of time thinking about it. It wasn't haphazard. So let me tell you a little bit about who trusts creators. If you are in the webinar where I gave this stat, please don't respond. But for everyone else, I want you to guess, knowing that for Kenya it's 12 to 14%, yeah? What percentage of millennials, since you guys are the majority in the room, trust creators for purchase decisions? Very close, 68%. Let's do the same thing for Gen Z, 73%, which essentially is telling you this is 6 times more than ads. That's 7 times more. So your likelihood of getting more bang for your buck from a creator, especially in certain objectives. Keep in mind, reach is not one of those, because technically for reach, you can reach more people by just paying for more reach, right? But for consideration, anywhere where trust is involved, you have to question who you're talking to and who is talking for you. Because trust doesn't happen on a billboard. I don't think we ever go there, we look at that J Insurance billboard and go, yeah, I'm going to risk my family on that because it's creative. But you would do it if another mother came and told you, this saved my child's life, right? So let's rethink C. I think what we want to think from C is what sensory proof do you need to be able to make that decision? This is how I think about it when I think about our market. Because whatever you're showing, someone has to have a response to. We have an economy of affection, an economy of trust. And that means that people will react to what they feel when they see what they see. And if they see an ad, they don't really feel anything. But when they see someone, they feel something. And that's what you want to leverage on. When you think about think, you want to think about the idea, concept, perception that you want to drive. Try to synthesize your concept around that, because then that's when you start to make sense. What do you want? What impression do you want to leave this person with? When someone talks about this Converge session, what do you want them to say? Do you want them to say, it was very insightful but very boring? No. You want them to say insightful and engaging and learned so much about black t-shirts. When you think do, you want to think what's the desired action. Because, and I'm going to pause here for a second, we are also not the same as Western countries where you can just measure conversion and know that money has gone through. How many of you pay for something before you receive it? See how low those hands are? Standard practice, the way this framework was developed was based on people clicking buy and paying with their cards on their computers. We are the ones for going on the phone and someone sends you a price and you reply best offer. Like, we don't follow the Amazon framework, right? So a DM is worth a lot more than you think. Because, again, we don't window shop. What we do is we'll ask the price and we'll think about it and then come back and then think about it. And if someone says the right thing to you, they already have you. So that DM is worth a lot more. Because for you, the business, now coming back to the business side of things, what you want to figure out is what do you do with all the people who asked you the price? When you put the price on the post and then they send you the post on Instagram and say, what's the best price you can give me? Or they send you and they say, how quickly can this be delivered? That's where the decision is made. Yeah, it's not made at the point where you put up an ad that has a CTA. Your CTA is in your inbox. Your CTA is at the point of engagement. Your CTA is when they open WhatsApp and call you or send you a message, right? And then the last thing is in terms of engagement. This is where we also have to think about the way we engage with our consumers a bit differently. Because they'll be online, they might also need to be offline. I think a lot of times corporations that come up with these frameworks really think about it from the large top-down standpoint. But sometimes this just means, can I have tea with 10 of you in a month? Can we have a conference with 50 of you every quarter? That level of engagement makes a difference, because this is where real connections happen. And then this is where your happy customers, your fulfilled customers, the people who have worked with you and said, Anne is the best trainer. Give her all your money. She's over there with the blonde. But the point being, if you get to that point where you have your happy customers who've gone and they've trained with her and then they come back and they're just saying, yo, we had a good time. One, if you are one of the happy customers, you feel validated in your decision. You feel acknowledged. You feel a sense of community. I'm foreshadowing a lot. There's community that's coming up after this is what I'm trying to say. But yes, that part is very important. One of the things you want to be able to do is to make sure you judge each stage by its own KPI and not the next stage's KPI. This is a big mistake that we make, and we'll actually give you a case study of how we made this mistake. Because sometimes you want attention and you want reach, and then you're measuring your conversions to see whether the attention campaign worked. Yeah, it happens. It's very common. You kind of have to have discipline when it comes to this part of the process, right? The last kind of area of acronyms I'm going to give you is this decision system. And if you remember correctly, there's going to be a quiz after this. So this is how you kind of make sure you aim your spend with intention. First things first, I do want to say this because I said it in the webinar. Promotion, any form of marketing that you're doing is just one of the 4 Ps, right? Guys, anyone familiar with the 4 Ps? Okay, if you are, don't say anything. Keep that knowledge to yourself. 4 Ps are product, price, place, and promotion, right? So before you get into promoting, please make sure you have all those other things sorted out. Please make sure you have a very clear idea of what product or service you want to push. There's a checklist here. It will be in the notes, so you can use this to just check if you're ready to actually spend money. I really strongly advise as many people as possible, just be really clear on what you want to do before you do it. Otherwise, don't do it. Before you spend any money, do you have a clear product you're pushing, clear service? Can you be found? I've had people run campaigns and then tell me, yeah, but my website is down now, but let's just start anyway. And the minute you put anyway there, you have a problem. You want to make sure you have a clear objective. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to get info? Are we trying to get sales? Are we trying to get more connections? What are we trying to do? And be really clear there. And then the last thing is, are you ready to invest? Because this happens a lot where you plan. And then when you're given the bill, you go, well, maybe next month. I will say this on behalf of everybody who's had to work with entrepreneurs. You can push it. If you push it now, you'll push it next month. Yeah. If you're not ready to invest, if you're not, like, the intention isn't there, it's going to be a negative whichever month you do it. We've had that experience in our own business where we didn't invest in a sales team until we got to the point where we're like, okay, we've been saying we're going to invest in a sales team for X amount of time. You have to have the discipline to be able to know this is what the business needs. And the same way you invested in it to start, you have to invest in it to grow. Okay, so like I said, last acronym. This one is simple because, it's a decision system, right? It helps you find direction. It's compass. The things you want to use for your decision making. First, channel. You want to be able to try and figure out which channels you have. If you have enough money to test multiple channels, test them against each other. But if you don't, try and pick one to focus on. I'm going to boost on Instagram and see how that works. I'm going to boost on Facebook and see how that works. If you have enough money to say, I want to try Instagram versus Facebook, well and good. If you want to try creators versus ads, well and good, etc., etc. I want to try SEO, then the objectives also have to line up. So you have to make sure this is just one of the things that you look at. Speaking of objectives, you want to make sure your objectives are clear. Right? So if you see that there's a conflict here, drop whichever the conflict is. If you're trying to drive sales through, I'm trying to think which is an awareness channel that is not known for converting. If you're trying to drive sales through, say, YouTube ads, or like I've just told you, display ads don't really drive as much. If you're targeting a 20% conversion rate in Kenya, like a certain company that we did e-commerce work for many years ago, remember? You're shooting in the sky hoping to hit a bird. Like there's a likelihood it'll happen, but that's all there is. There's a possibility, right? You're more likely to just walk outside and find a customer and convince them to walk into your shop. Metrics, you want to be really clear on what you're measuring. I say this frequently, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Do not assume that every number you have is relevant. And do not assume that everything that is relevant is a number. Sometimes there's value in just promoting so that you can get brand love because it drives, a certain amount of value to your brand. There's value in perception. There's value in investing in things that aren't directly sales. So you want to be really clear based on your objective, what's the best way to measure it? If you know, for example, that if you're trying to target a high-end audience, a lot of that means you just need to get access into that space to be able to sell, right? So a lot of it is just going to be perception and how people receive you. So vanity metrics start to matter all of a sudden. If I wanted to speak at Capital Club every weekend and they go to my page and they see, wow, this guy has 1 million views, I don't think they check whether I promoted the post, but they do check whether I have 1 million views. And for them, that means this is a high demand speaker. Let me go get that guy. At the same time, if I was trying to sell you a t-shirt, it doesn't really matter if I have 1 million views, if the t-shirt doesn't look the way I want it to look. If I'm trying to speak to you about children and you see 1 million views but 0 comments, not a single person said anything about children in the comments. Those are very tight-knit communities where trust matters a lot. If I don't see engagement, it doesn't matter. So engagement matters more than reach in those settings. So really be clear on what the objective and the metric and the tie-in to those two things are when you're trying to make your decision. And then figure out which partner. So it's either an ad partner, it's a creator, it's whichever channel you want to go through. Like I said, you don't directly access the audience yourself. In many cases, you will go through a conduit. Who is that conduit, right? The asset is usually content. It's usually a story. It's usually something. Sometimes it's creative, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a testimonial. Sometimes it's a referral. Sometimes it's a search result, because we've talked SEO and SEM quite a bit. Then you want to really figure out your spend. Now, at this point, if your spend does not align with any of these things, you start changing up so that it can align with your spend. So if, say, for example, you have 1,000 shillings to spend and your plan was to hire a mega influencer, pause, your initial plan was false. What can you do with 1,000 shillings? And there's always something you can do with any amount of money. We've promoted pages for like, hundreds and thousands. And then we've also promoted pages for like thousands and millions. So you have to kind of pause and say, does my spend align with my goals? Just be very clear there. And if you need guidance there, like I'll say it at the end, you can always reach out and we'll give you a free consult. And then the last thing is just sprint. You want to make some sort of definitive block. I am going to test this for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And at the end of those 2-3 weeks, I'm going to go back and look at my assumptions and check whether they were validated. If you do not put those boundaries in place, what tends to happen is that you just run something and then base it based on whatever your needs are. As small businesses, we are also a small business. It is very easy to get blinded by need. It's very easy to get blinded by the situation you're in right now. And this is one of those things that requires discipline, where you have to be able to say, this is the objective, this is the target, this is the things I'd set, all these different acronyms that I've given you, use them. And then when you evaluate against them. Don't evaluate against how it felt. It never feels good spending money. Well, I mean, I guess it does if you have it. Let me not speak as a poor person, but yeah, it just usually doesn't feel good spending out before you get something back in. And you can assume the test failed because you didn't immediately get something back in. But how long does it take for that customer to actually convert? And how can you measure that if you're doing a 2-week sprint? If I promote now and I tell you guys to go and invest in whatever, everything, anytime you see Kayana, just throw money at it. Amen. But you don't have the money now, you'll have it next month. Is she supposed to say Sed's endorsement was useless? No. But in October, when you show up and say, here you go, that's where the value is. So for her, what is she looking at right now? How many people did Sed say it to? That's success. He said it to 20 people. For my sprint right now, that's success. And have the discipline to continue doing that. This is the objective right now. This is the metric right now. Cool? All right, so the practical. We're going to look at an actual campaign. This is a campaign that ran on Nzomo in the last few months for this brand called VIII. They do shea body butter. So whipped shea, and it's really dope. You can tell by my skin. I'm joking, but it is quite fantastic. They have a lot of very cool flavors. Please check them out on Instagram, whipped.ke. So with them, what we started with was trying to figure out very clearly what are we trying to do. The diagnostic was very clear. One, knew exactly what product we're pushing. Okay, so, cake. So one, knew exactly what product we're pushing, knew exactly who our ideal customer was. Very easy to find online because they were specifically pushing this on Instagram, which is where they were. And they had a very clear objective. Yeah, so that was straight to the point. And of course, they had money to invest to test, which we'll talk about just a bit. In terms of insight, iterate, invest, they knew why customers bought. Most people bought based on the recommendation, but the recommendation came from someone saying, wow, it feels so nice. Wow, it smells so nice. Wow, texture, scent, the sensory experience, right? So they knew that's what they were pushing. Even when they sent the samples out to test that theory, remember before spending what they do, they did samples, sent them out to a bunch of people, got feedback, told people to share their feedback. You got it for free and then you share in your stories and say, oh, it smells really nice. Did we see a bump in sales? There was a bump in sales. So we know this works. right? Women's Day, they picked a bunch of creators that they really supported and they sent them more products to test this a second time with different, now we're giving you 2 or 3 different scents. We see what you say, including an unscented one. And then again, now Mother's Day, we moved into launching a full-on campaign, right? So this test initially was for C. What does awareness do to our numbers? We wanted to test messaging, so how people talk about this in their different ways. And the goal was to see whether or not we could get orders. You can already see where the problem here is. We had a misaligned goal. But anyway, again, down to the channel objectives, the compass side. Instagram leads, wanted to get as many DMs as possible, but what were we looking at? We're looking at orders, but we did check the DMs later. We got 4 creators to work on this. We got the creators to decide how they wanted to tell that story. She put aside 200K and she wanted to run this for 2 months. In terms of pitfalls, obviously, we looked at seeing and we used a do metric. We didn't have very tight and sprint. So it's 2 months, but then we had like 1 week when it was noisy and then like quiet for 2 weeks. Another week. So there was some scattered data over there. There were some windows that were missed and we didn't get the full compounded effect. And then we had occasional posts that were just not sequenced. One of the benefits with creators when you talk to them and try to work with them, you will hear sequence matters. Like if I can talk about a product continuously, then I'm able to tell a full story. I just received this. Let's see how it goes. Next day, I just tried it. It's really good. Ooh, I gave my mom some. She loved it as well. You know what? This is now my new favorite product. That's way more convincing than I just received this and it's my favorite product. So some learnings there as well. The other thing was the discipline, obviously, is how we could have fixed it. We could have matched the creators to the objectives, which we didn't. And then we didn't do the weekly test loop. Remember test from before? And I highlighted it. And then I said, what does the S stand for? Actually, that's a question in the upcoming thing. So ignore that. Ignore. Where do we go from here? I think there's a few things we can do. And genuinely, I think there's a lot of kind of what I've stated, which sounds very simple and should be very simple because the goal is to drive to action. So if you are a business right now, which I'm assuming you all are, that is trying to scale, which I'm assuming you all are, my goal or my challenge to you is pick a test. Pick one thing you want to test and then test it. Pick a budget that you're comfortable with spending on that test and then run with it. Fill out the same way that I've just kind of shown you with Whipped. It genuinely should not take longer than that. It should not take longer than trying to think, this is what it's worth. This is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to find out, and then do it. Because best case scenario, you end up with a good, successful campaign. You get something out of it. Worst case scenario, you end up with more insights than you have right now as to why your business is not where you want it to be, right? And that's not a lose-lose. That's a win-win by any measure. So please, whatever you can do, do that. Thanks so much for entertaining me. I will exit the stage now and yield to Pat. Thank you.